Today's episode of Northern Lights is presented by North Star Law Group, a trusted partner for small businesses in Minnesota's legal cannabis industry. Whether you've already applied for a license or just getting started, attorney Jen Riza and her team can help you build a compliant business, identify and navigate risks, put together an application, and keep you informed about the ever-changing Minnesota cannabis landscape. Are you ready to add North Star to your team? Visit northstarlaw.com/cannabis and let North Star Law Group guide you through confidently opening your doors. Again, that's northstarlaw.com/cannabis.
Tanner, we can, does that work for you?
Yeah, that actually works.
We can unplug you and just wire it down through your...
That's really good.
No, I mean, this works for me if this is good for you.
Yeah, that's
all right.
It's the best carrot I've seen in a long time.
And we're back. Another episode of Northern Lights Podcast. Steve, welcome back.
Hey, thanks. Steve Urkel here. Here to give you the news.
So happy to have you here. We should say for the listeners online, you are dressed like Steve Urkel right now. It's not just Steve, it's Steve.
Steve Urkel.
Welcome.
Yes. And I just pulled you out of the ground.
It's true. It's true. We are rooted here in the Dabbler Depot. You might not care at all about Halloween. All right, I'll top making the puns. I'll top it.
There's some real puns stemming out of the studio.
Yeah.
It's our Halloween episode this week. We have Elizabeth Sage on the podcast a little bit later. Great interview we just wrapped up.
Yeah, you guys had a great conversation. It was so cool hearing about a little bit more about the Ganjier program, but also what consumers around the country are really looking for in terms of their cannabis.
Yeah, I loved hearing her voice. I loved hearing her break down all the different ways that they, within the Ganjier program, judge cannabis as a flower and as a drug in a sense, like the effect, you know?
Yeah, I don't want to spoil the interview, but I do want to try at some point taking a jar and setting it on the table and opening it and just sort of waiting. I like that approach of how strong is it? Well, only time will tell.
I love the nuance and the bits that you provide, because you yourself are somewhat of an aficionado, but you also recognize that there are other ways to be an aficionado.
100%. And it's really cool having people that actually go and study all of this. And it's not just, that I had a jar that smelled really good, but being able to describe a lot of that background. So
yes.
Yeah, great interview. Definitely listen through to that. We got a bunch of news. We got the high note. We're going to be opening some boxes. We've got a couple different boxes we're going to be checking out today. We've got a great episode.
Ooh, baby.
Ooh, baby. But first, let's just go ahead and jump in with the news. Now, we don't have a ton of really specific news stories for this week. The news is the same. We're all waiting. We talked last week on the podcast about people got deficiency notices for their social equity application.
Have you seen what a deficiency notice looks like?
Yeah, for sure. So I've looked at a couple of them. They're pretty straightforward. It says you submitted an application. There's a couple things we need changed. And most of them that people are having to do is a supplemental form for their cap table, which for people who don't know what that means, it means you're downloading a PDF, you're putting your name in that PDF, you're putting your business's name in that PDF, and then you're checking a box to say that the information that you uploaded is correct.
Okay.
A lot of applicants got that because the way that they developed the form was in Excel, and if you used Google Sheets for it, the button you had to check, it just wasn't there anymore. So many people that I've talked to waited months to hear back, hey, do you mind turning in a piece of paper?
Run that back for me again. The minuscule effort that required what all?
So people had to submit their cap table. It essentially describes who owns their business.
Yeah.
OCM, when they made the application, opted to use an Excel spreadsheet for that. Now, most of us have Excel on our computer.
Right.
But if you don't, I don't blame you. It's 2024.
Yeah.
You use Google Sheets or some online software. That software, when you imported the Excel sheet, just didn't carry all of the data along with it. So a lot of people, if you use Google Sheets, are having to check a box and get it resubmitted.
just that. Interesting.
Yeah. But at least what's nice to know now is we have the date that all of those were sent out. People have up to 2 weeks to get that information back to them, and then the review starts again. So by the end of November, we should have a better idea of when that actual date for the lottery will be.
Now, if you missed last week's episode, I recommend you go back and watch the Jason Tarasek interview.
Yeah, for sure.
Jason predicted between like November 5th. I think he said between Election Day and Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And Jason knows a thing or two about a thing or two, and he was going off a hunch, but I'm going to be watching to see if Jason's prediction turns out to be correct, and if so, it's going to be an exciting December.
Totally. Yeah, we've got a lot to watch for over the next couple of weeks. I mean, it's crazy to think that when this episode comes out, we'll be only 1 week away from Election Day.
Wow.
We're coming into the closing parts of this election season. So.
I voted this week.
You did? Hey,
yeah,
congrats.
I got my early ballot in, and
I dig that.
yeah, it was fun. I'm a St. Paul resident, so it was kind of fun to go through. And
This isn't in our show notes, but if you check our episode description, we'll put a link on where you can find where you can go and vote. We really encourage people to go and choose, utilize their opportunity to go and make their voice heard. So go cast that ballot. We only have legal cannabis in Minnesota, or soon we'll have it, because people voted.
right on.
All right. Now, let's dig into what I was really excited to talk about this week. Now, across Minnesota, there are people buying legal cannabis. They're buying it in dispensaries. They're buying it in medical shops. Maybe some of them are getting it from friends, family. However be it, people are getting cannabis. And now that we've got stores open across the state of Minnesota, we can take a minute to sort of look at what does legal cannabis actually cost in Minnesota. Now, we're still such early days. Like, if you wanted to go to a dispensary in Minneapolis, well, you've got one option, and you better be a med patient. If you want to go to a dispensary and you're not a med patient, well, you're driving at least an hour outside the cities. It's not a great time to be a cannabis consumer, but if you were, what are you spending? Right.
And we talked about this like in August as we were getting ready to kind of come back online. We were like, where should we set our promotional packages at? And not to plug the promotion side of this business or this show, but it is a business, and our packages start at $3.80 an ounce. We may have to adjust this based on the conversation we're about to have.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's been fun watching over the past couple of months, seeing, what does cannabis cost? When some of these dispensaries first opened, the comments on Reddit were ablaze with, it's more expensive than I get it from my guy.
Yeah.
It's like, well, yeah, your guy didn't just open a new storefront. So excited to dig into what these prices look like. Now, we're going to start going through from the first that was opening in Minnesota, at least on the adult use side, and then sort of work our way from there.
And we're going to cover Red Lake, White Earth, Island Paisy.
Oh, yeah.
Sweetest Grass.
Yep.
And then the two medical operators in the state.
Exactly. Yeah. So across the entire state of Minnesota, these are sort of your prices. So you're up in Red Lake, you're going to Native Care, you're walking in and you're saying, what is that lowest amount of money that I could spend to get cannabis? I'm looking to walk out with an eighth. What does that cost?
Okay. Now an eighth, growing up, suburb kid, it was like 30-60s was probably the most common pricing you'd see.
Yeah. And for people who don't know, maybe you're a new cannabis consumer, maybe you've only bought in the legal market, 3.5 grams is that standard eighth. We've all bought an eighth before that maybe we're less than that. But, now that's what we as a market has settled on. And for $50, you're walking out with an eighth of Jelly Breath.
Jelly Breath. Yeah. And I've had a few gummies already since the show started.
You're good.
But
You're so good.
Jelly Breath is one that I really want to try. I'd love to get that on the show. I know that's a popular cultivar up at Native Care.
Yeah. They love their jelly blends, that's for sure. Because if you were looking to really ball out and walk out with a whole ounce of flower, what is like the most expensive product you could walk out with? Well, an ounce for $380 of their Hella Jelly, grown right there in Red Lake, Minnesota.
Hella Jelly.
Hella Jelly.
Shout out to Native Care. And I do think they set a standard in this market right now.
Yeah. All right. So now you're in White Earth, Minnesota.
Wabigowan
Mashkiki.
There it is.
Oh, yeah. We love Wabigowan Mashkiki. It's a really cool brand that you can find actually across the entire state of Minnesota. Because you can go and buy it in White Earth, or, as we'll talk about a little bit later, there are other places you can get this flower as well.
And we've mentioned how White Earth is looking to grow into a Moorhead store as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm excited to be able to go to homecoming next year.
Yes, you are.
Check that out. But so you're going up to White Earth. You're looking to get out. What's that cheapest eighth you can get? Well, you're going to walk out for $45 with an eighth of their apple fritter.
A little bit cheaper than the eighth that I got at Native Care, the Jelly Breath. So it's close. Only maybe a $5 difference. Are there going to be any differences in taxes between going to the White Earth dispensary versus the Red Lake Nation? I think White Earth is charging taxes, and I don't believe
Correct.
Red Lake is Native Care.
Yeah, so White Earth modeled theirs after the 10% that you get across the entire state of Minnesota.
Yeah.
Native Care, you're walking out $380 final price.
And did you know, because I know, Native Care is a bit more sovereign than some of the other tribes in this state. And so Native Care really, broad strokes, Native Care really is regulated by the federal government. It's the state of Minnesota has less purview over what takes place on their reservation. And so that's why they were unabashed or unafraid to get their cannabis program rolling in order for them to open August 1st, 2023.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when we first talked about that when Minnesota switched over to legalization, and they were the first ones, day one, to be selling flower because, like you said, they're really a much more, in the grand scheme of things, the spectrum of sovereignty.
Yes.
Have a little bit more leeway in terms of what they're able to do and what contact Minnesota has with it.
And so if that appeals to you, you can go to the Red Lake Nation, which is quite far away from where most folks in Minnesota live, but you can get tax-free weed at Native Care.
Yeah, both of the dispensaries that we just talked about, Native Care, Wabigowan, Mashkiki, both northern Minnesota, which sort of flips the script where for a long time, if you wanted medical access, it was better to live in the cities. Otherwise, maybe you had to drive 40, 50 miles to be able to get to one dispensary.
Right.
Now, if you're looking on the legal side, they have much greater access than we do us down in the city. Folks.
Yeah. And let's keep going because they'll keep getting closer.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we're getting closer to the Twin Cities, Island Peze. So you could go there. Their flower is not grown by them. So we talked about Native Care, White Earth, they both grow their own flower. Island Peze is sourcing all of theirs from White Earth.
Okay.
So it's going to be flower that you're finding that's going to be pretty similar to what you find up north. The prices are a little bit higher, though. In fact, this is as of this morning when we looked at the menu. So it's Friday morning. I want to be transparent about that.
How'd the menu look?
So they had one flower product for sale. It was an eighth of Triangle Poison for $56.64.
I don't trust much of that at all.
Yeah.
Why is it $56.64?
It's an interesting, why not just round it to a whole number? But it's also, you can see the clear price hike in that White Earth is able to grow the flower and sell it, keep a lot of that value internally. Island Peze, because they're having to source all their flower from other people, it's just going to be a little bit more expensive.
Triangle Poison.
Yeah.
This kind of scares me a little.
Not tried it yet. Tried it yet.
Sure.
All right, and then Sweetest Grass. That's the last open, currently operating tribal dispensary in Minnesota as of right now. There are other ones we've talked about in the past. Off the Path is one that is getting closer to opening. But if you wanted to buy flower, adult use, these are the 4 places to go. Sweetest Grass is the last one. Now, I want to sort of put a little bit of an asterisk on this one.
Okay.
They do have platinum tier flower is what they call it.
Yeah, I've been asking about that a little bit.
Yeah, some of it is sourced from White Earth. Others, though, is not.
Okay.
It appears based on reporting from the Star Tribune that it's essentially like THCA flower grown in a more loose hemp program.
Your hair looks great, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah. We're running with it in a. We're doing it live, as they say. But yeah, selling flower that is definitely the cheapest out of the 3. It's not $3.80 an ounce. It's not $3.20 an ounce. Instead, you're spending closer to $3.20 to walk out with that highest grade platinum tier flower.
And so the platinum tier is what I would call like real cannabis. That's the White Earth sourced, or because we're not quite sure.
Yeah, they don't make super clear. Okay. You go to Island Peze. Yeah, there's not a lot of options, but you know exactly where they're coming from.
Yep.
Sweetest Grass has a little bit more leniency. Now, yes, you're walking out much cheaper. You could get an eighth of flower for $35. That's the cheapest price in Minnesota as of today. But is it adult use flower grown in Minnesota? Not necessarily.
Yeah, I do. With these last 2 here, I do have concerns around the transparency, given that they're seen as dispensaries. They're seen as differentiated from what the Minnesota consumer can find at Cannajoy or at Dabbler Depot, and so I think there's room for improvement here from a transparency standpoint.
Absolutely. So just because I'm a numbers guy, I love to look at the average. So the average ounce price at Red Lake is roughly $3.44. They sort of vary in price a little bit. White Earth gets a little bit lower, $3.25. Sweetest Grass is at lowest at $3.20, which of course we talked about, not all grown in Minnesota. And then Island Peze, well, you're going to be spending a lot to walk out with an ounce because they only have it in an eighth.
So you'd have to buy 8.
Yep.
I get it.
Yep. So you're walking out at a little over $400 for an ounce, all individually jarred up into eighth jars.
$4.50.
Oh yeah. So that's just a little preview of what the prices look like on that adult use side in Minnesota. Obviously, that is all going to change as more shops open, as there's more access. This is more expensive than you'd find in a more developed state, but it really similarly models what states looked like in the early days of when they first came online. So,
I mean, shout out to White Earth for getting their product outside of their reservation. I think that's really cool, and I hope to continue to see that, and hope to continue to see more White Earth flowers so that it becomes more synonymous. Yeah. I also know Native Care is upping their grow lights and growing their cultivation capabilities so that they may be able to do the same.
Yeah.
And the others, I hope to see just more growth.
For sure. Absolutely agree. So let's touch a little bit on the medical side, because we do have three cannabis industries here in Minnesota. And I wanted to at least touch on what the medical side looks like today. I think we hear a lot of comments about how expensive the medical program is. And as a medical patient, I would say, yeah, absolutely. It's very expensive. But they introduced flower a couple years back that has helped to sort of stabilize a bit what that pricing looks like here in our medical program. Is it still at a point where someone who uses this as medicine on a regular basis could afford it? Maybe not. But let's talk about what that price would look like. So we've got 2 medical dispensaries, Rise and Green Goods. No longer we've got Minnesota Medical Solutions, Leafline. No more. Now, if you walked into Rise, you could get an eighth of their sour diesel. It's their Shine in-house brand for about $35. So you're paying about $10 a gram for that.
I mean, given how easy it is to get your medical card now, that doesn't seem like a bad option.
No.
On face value.
Absolutely. You could also walk out with an entire ounce. Now, this was the cheapest. There are more expensive ounces you could get. That gets you closer to like $220 per ounce if you wanted to get baklava is a cultivar they had.
Okay.
So already that medical price, about $100 cheaper than the cheapest available adult use. But of course, these medical companies have been open for a decade. They're selling to different consumers. They have different rules that they can grow under. Just a different market.
You're saying this flower's been sitting around for a decade?
Maybe a little bit. All right. Now let's move on to Green Goods. Now, Green Goods has that same price. You're spending $35 for an eighth. Not a huge investment, you could say. And for an ounce, you're looking at $2.20.
It makes sense that they're price matching.
Yeah, it reminds me of those gas stations that are like right across the street from each other, and one lowers the price for a gallon, and wow, the other one mirrors it really closely. And the two medical menus, well, there are differences. They have different brands. Their pricing pretty similar.
Right. $2.90. Yeah, it does remind me of the gas station, and $35 for an eighth is. I mean, it sounds good. Do you think we'll start to see a year from now? Do you think we'll see cheaper eighths or more expensive eighths?
Such a great question. I think coming from adult use businesses, it'll probably be right around that same price, probably around like $50, $60 for each one.
Yeah.
I think for our medical companies, they're selling on the cheaper side now, trying to increase the amount of consumers they have on their medical side.
Yeah.
So that they can really scale up when it comes to what adult use looks like.
Okay.
So I think, will they keep selling $35 ounces? Or excuse me, that'd be nice. $35 eighths. Honestly, I think I could see that price going up a little bit in the early days of adult use, just because they've got it. So why not sell it for what people will pay for it?
And as the podcast or as the industry continues to progress, and as we're able to continue to cover the industry and what's happening, I really want to pay attention to how many medical dispensaries we will have.
Yeah.
The days of the duopoly are numbered.
Absolutely. Well, and we'll have perhaps one of the most open medical programs in the entire state, where you won't just have to be able to sell it at a medical-only dispensary, but if you're adult use, you have someone who is able to consult on the medical side, you can sell medical cannabis.
Right.
So it'll be cool to see how that all rolls out. So that's just a little preview of what it would cost to buy cannabis in Minnesota today. Steve, are you paying $320 an ounce? No. No, I think it's an important reminder that the legacy market will continue to exist until the prices of the legal market really are able to start dragging consumers over from that side.
Tanner, unfortunately, the price of gas is a little bit more expensive to get there.
Gas for gas?
Gas
That'd be a
for
good
gas.
All right.
Sounds like an Ironwood dispensary.
Exactly, right? Well, so speaking of national cannabis, we've been doing previews into different ballot measures across the entire country. We talked about states like South Dakota, North Dakota, Florida that are looking to legalize adult use. Talked about Nebraska on the medical side. We talked about Maryland last week on the psychedelic side. And I wanted to give one more plug to a ballot measure in Oregon, because I think it really plays well to what we in Minnesota are doing. Now, Oregon has had legal cannabis for quite a while. That's not new to them. They're not voting on that this year. Instead, what they're voting on is allowing cannabis workers to more easily unionize. Now, Oregon was one of the first states to come online when it came to legal sales, but they had a really underdeveloped program, if you will. What the rules looked like, it was the early days. They were trying to figure it out.
Wild, Wild West.
Exactly. We in Minnesota had the privilege, if you will, of being able to look at 23 other states that had done this already and ask, what did they do well? And then what didn't work? Well, one of the things that we saw that really was important to a well-functioning industry is strong arming, if you will, cannabis businesses into allowing unions to become part of the workplace. They don't have to make their workplace unionize, but they do, through a labor peace agreement, have to allow unions to come in, talk to their employees, and let them know what their rights are.
Sure.
That's something that we in Minnesota had written into our bill. Every single business outside of the micro side has to have a labor peace agreement, but other states didn't do that. Currently, only California, Connecticut, New Jersey, New York, Virginia, and Minnesota require that.
It makes you wonder if, because of the way that Minnesota approached their cannabis bill, if it had an effect on Oregon attempting to create a better environment for the employees that make up the industry.
I absolutely think so. I had the opportunity to go to the Minority Cannabis Business Association leadership forum just at the early part of this week. And there was so many conversations around, what does the Minnesota model look like? How does it fit into the national conversation? And what everyone was saying is that the Minnesota model, whether it works or not, which I think it will, but regardless, it at least put equity at the front of the conversation. When Kamala Harris came out for legalization, in 2 sentences, I think it's telling that one of the statements was in a socially equitable way. And that's something that Colorado didn't have.
Right.
Oregon, Washington, they didn't have. Minnesota, however, we did.
Sure.
And so I hope that on the union side, we're also making advancements and allowing others in the industry to make advancements towards, even if a union isn't right for their workplace, at least having those discussions.
Because I think often because of the influence that GTI has on our medical program here, and the lineage of bad things happening in Illinois with dispensaries and people dying on the job in a couple instances, I think it is super important. Plus, we ourselves know of poor working conditions for folks in the industry. And so for Oregon to try to recorrect maybe 10 years in or so, approximately, knowing that they legalized with pretty loose rules. I mean, I always heard about the amount of flour that was being produced, or there's no license cap there, right? So it's an infinity amount of ounces can be produced in Oregon. I would say that this is a step in the right direction for employees who make up the large chunk of the industry.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think this step, like I said, I don't think a union is right for maybe every single workplace, especially like Minnesota specifically calls out, if you're a micro business with less than 10 employees, like it's you and 5 other people, a union might not be the best way to move forward in a conversation about what workplace safety looks like. But yeah, I mean, some of these businesses that are going to come online, that are going to have cultivation teams, they're going to have processing teams, that are going to be vertically integrated businesses that do tons of things. I think it's important that at least the workers have the opportunity to figure out what are my rights in the workplace, and if we want to bargain together, how do we do that?
And to take it out of Oregon and kind of back into Minnesota here, I think in the last 5 years post-pandemic, we've seen some unique instances of unionization in the beverage industry,
Absolutely.
in the food industry. And if cannabis can be more of a career for folks, you may not see as many millionaires or billionaires as they're often co-opted together, but we want jobs.
Yeah.
We want a new industry to come online. We want people to feel like they can really earn a living. And I think unions help get there.
Yeah, I think the conversation when Colorado went online was, this is an opportunity for intergenerational wealth, to build something that you can pass on to future generations as I did this just by starting a business. And while I still think that's the conversation, I still think that's the goal for many people, I think there's also the mindset now of it's not just rising the one person, but how do we use this business to help rise all ships?
Yeah.
How do we take people who maybe didn't have legal careers and give them legal careers? How do we take people who were doing things that we all see as valuable business, but that wasn't legal before, and turn them into the entrepreneurs of the future? I think it's through measures like this, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, we're having to reset expectations. I think nationally the conversation is maybe cannabis isn't the get-rich-quick scheme that we thought it was. I mean, you look at the pot stocks, and there's not much to brag about there.
I know. Oh, yeah.
We'll talk about that some other time.
We'll do it offline.
And then the other part about it is we just need to be able to create jobs. There aren't a lot of new industries being stood up, as they say, right? Yeah. Cannabis is a once-in-a-generational new industry opportunity that, and I'm sure I want to hear more about the leadership forum, like it's not about 10 people getting rich. It's about 100 people getting a better life.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think that's the opportunity we all have in cannabis, is even if it's not building something that, wow, I did this work for a couple of weeks and now I get to pass it on to future generations.
Yeah.
But can I do work over the next couple of months that help me to build a life that we all hope, the American dream, whatever that means, is perhaps seen best through the cannabis industry these days.
And real quick, it's interesting for an established market to go back and try to fix something foundationally missing in their business relationship.
Yeah, this would require it to be part of the renewal process. So it's not going to affect you today, but the next time you're renewing your business, if you don't have some sort of labor peace agreement in place, your business is getting denied. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break there. When we get back, we're going to hear your interview with Elizabeth Sage, and then we've got some edibles and some high notes to hit.
Let's go.
We'll be right back. Ready to kick off your home grow? We've got the perfect hookup for you. MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. They've got everything from fast flowering strains to unique hybrids, all ready for growing in Minnesota. And guess what? Our listeners get an exclusive deal. Use the code NL10 for a 10% discount on your entire order. Don't miss out and get started with the best seeds. Start your growth strong with MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. Remember, NL10 for 10% off at MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. Grab your seeds today. I just wish there was some way that I could tell people that I lived in Minnesota, that I liked cannabis, that I was a listener of the Northern Lights podcast. There is! Northern Lights merch!
Dope.
You can get yours today. mncannabiscollege.org/Northern Lights. Get your shirts, get your mugs. Check it out. Get it all today.
The gentleman, a part of the dispensary, commented on one of our posts about a beverage review and said something along those same lines, like, what are we doing with the rest of the plant, essentially? Yeah. And I think it's a really fair question, but it doesn't necessarily lend itself to scaling gummies across the country in the way that these brands are buying from, nutraceutical companies and then essentially creating their own product. I mean, just using it as an ingredient, not thinking about it holistically.
Well, and I think that's the disservice that it does too, is that it doesn't. Did you get the shot before you open that up?
I need this more than I need this shot.
I can appreciate that. Oh, it's plugged in over there.
These are good. These are really soft.
I think what makes me sad is not necessarily like the biomass that's left over, but what we're leaving out by only putting an isolate of CBN in, or only putting an isolate of CBC or CBG, when we know that there's all of these other things in the plant that are so beneficial.
Right.
But because it's part of the, you can only have this much of this, and it's harder to do this, and it's more expensive. We rob people of some of the benefit for the cost.
Counter perspective. You walk into a store that sells these types of products. You get the retail employee's perspective on what CBG does.
Mm-hmm.
They're not mandated to say any specific antidote, right? So you get their perspective. I've been in stores and thought, I don't necessarily agree with what the counter is telling the customer.
Mm-hmm.
These products now, because they're isolated, allow the customer to try it on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And although it's not great long term, it is very good for introductory cannabinoid understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And the on-ramp
Consistency.
is nice to say, hey, we know this won't get you high. And there is a market for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's probably where one of the biggest markets is in the minor cannabinoids and how they can be beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just because I brought it in today, but I was really proud of the product I made in April with Modest and Canna Connect, because it was balanced enough that you could have a couple of them even as a novice user. And I think in theory, I do think, and I want to pin Tanner down at some point and get an answer, but I do think you can make 110 milligram beverage.
Mm-hmm.
If you took one of these, and 5 of those, it's vague enough in the language. They're not saying you can do it. They're not saying you can't do it. They're saying 25 for each of these, and no more than 5 per serving, and no more than 0.5 of all others.
Mm-hmm. There's got to be a cost barrier to that at some point, though, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
And also taste. At some point, the distillate will.
Yeah, there's not enough of all the other stuff to put in that will cover that up. Although ginger's a brilliant play, as well as lemon too, because both of those have such strong profiles.
Yes, and that's a good terpene transition.
It is. Go ahead. Ooh, I love a good transition.
Well, before we talk about terpenes, I'd like for you to introduce yourself.
Cool. Do I look somewhere special to do that? This is me. Well, I'm Elizabeth Sage. I'm a certified Ganjier. I'm the founder of Sage Advice. I am a born and raised Minnesotan. I spent 15 years, most of my late 20s and 30s in Chicago, and I have been back here in Minnesota for 6.5 years. And I've been pretty much lifelong cannabis user since I was 15, way back in the 90s when that started. And it's always been something that was very beneficial to me, but not something that I could ever take into my professional corporate life. And so at some point, in the early 2000s, when we saw, medical had already been established in California, things were starting to move towards rec in a lot of other places. I knew that I wanted to transition into the cannabis industry, but there wasn't a lot of opportunity, especially outside of the very few states that were starting to take some of that on. And so when I moved here to Minnesota, we had a medical program here. There was a medical program in Illinois, both very small, very limited in their capacity. And as soon as I moved, Illinois legalized by executive order within about 6 months of my moving. And so I had no idea that that would be on the horizon there. And I had just spent 15 years and moved my whole family back here. And so I was a little disappointed because that, theoretically would have been a perfect transition for me. And I think in hindsight, it was actually a really good thing. I think the Illinois market is kind of tough. It's a very corporate market, which some people might think that, with my background being so corporate, that would be a great place for me. But, Illinois is just a very interesting market. And all of the reasons that I left Illinois, I think, are playing into what makes Illinois' market oh so interesting. So in 2019, I started doing a little bit of cannabis tourism. So going to California, going to Colorado, going to these different places that had legalization to see what they were doing. And I think like a lot of people was like, oh, a dispensary sounds really interesting. Growing sounds really interesting. So a lot of these really fun little missions to see what was what. And then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, I was working for McKinsey & Company, which is a big, consulting firm that is very active and moving. And it just, it all shut down and went inward. And they were very generous in terms of making sure that our mental health was stable. We were still working 55, 60 hours a week, but they, all of the fun things that come with working at a place like that, we didn't have those anymore. So they gave us money to do things and spend however would make us happy. And about that time, I heard of the Ganjier program, and it was brand new, just launching that year, and it really sparked my interest because I thought, I have an amazing corporate background. I love cannabis. I know the impact that it has. I know a little bit about it. I need something that has a breadth of information that allows me to become at least acquainted with all of the different areas of the industry, and then I can find my way into the different depths of it and see where I can be most impactful. So I went through that in 2021. And so if you aren't familiar with the Ganjier program, it is a sort of two-step cannabis immersion program, and at the end you're a cannabis sommelier. So very similar to how wine has a sommelier and beer has a cicerone and cheese has cheesemongers. They're looking to create something that is, what is the sommelier of weed? And that is the Ganjier. So there's 38 modules. You do them all online. I went out to Northern California to do my live training for a couple days. I went back 2 months later. I took a test. There's 3 parts. There's a written test, there's a customer interaction protocol, and then there's the cornerstone of the program, which is a systematic assessment protocol. And essentially it's a 100-point scale similar to Robert Parker that rates cannabis on the flavor, the aroma, the appearance, and the experience of it. So I went through that. I got an amazing education, but it lacked a community. It lacked the ability to learn more. And I'm naturally very curious. I had too many questions. If I understood something, I wanted to dive deeper into it. And there was a lot of other people in there that raised their hands and said, I'm really curious about this too. Or, the program's really in depth, but it's static because it's just online. And so what is that continuing level of education? Cannabis changes so quickly that if you're not staying on top of it, or if you're even tracking where people were 5 years ago, you're 5 years behind because it's changing that quickly. So out of that was born my community and my business, Sage Advice. And I support certified Ganjiers as they are out in the industry, as well as students going through the program. So they have live connections every week. We have different matters that we dive very deeply into. We work with cultivators across the country to look at their products and give them feedback on it. And essentially, we just provide a place for people to be seen and heard. And, it's a lot of people, they're weed nerds, and they've never met other people like that before, or they still live in prohibition states where they can't talk about this with anyone. So it's a continuous learning, and it's a beautiful place full of lots of beautiful people.
I didn't know all that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Grasping this concept, which if you're only learning online, it's challenging to apply logic outside of the modules that you're
very much
inside. I like that.
Yeah, and it's, there's people from every facet of the industry that have entered it. So oftentimes you get cultivators together, you get retail people in the same room. You get beverage makers. You don't often get a doctor, a lawyer, a compliance specialist, 3 different cultivators, a manufacturer, somebody who specializes in formulations, and they're all in the same room, and they might not even be talking about any of the things that they're working in, but they're bringing their questions and their perspective for how it applies to each of their businesses. So the conversations are much more robust. And because I require everyone who is in my community to either be in the Ganjier program or have been certified, the conversation level starts at about 300 because we know what everybody knows. There's no going back to say, does anybody not know this? Because you know.
This might be a tough one to answer, but where do Ganjiers land? Where have you seen?
That is a tough one to answer because I think truly the industry is still young enough that they're not landing the way a sommelier would. There's not restaurants who are looking for Ganjiers because they're not selling weed with their food. It's up to each person to find their value. And we do have some people in a little bit more mature markets who have worked their way into retail establishments. So they are the certified Ganjier on staff for enter XYZ.
Sure.
By and large, a lot of people are utilizing it in entertainment. So whether that is in doing private tastings and some of that chef work, we have activations that we've been involved with for different, like Hall of Flowers, for example, in California. If you're not familiar with Hall of Flowers, it's the largest business-to-business cannabis show. It's amazing, incredibly well done. This year, they opened up the second day to the public, which was really interesting and allowed them to kind of come in, meet all of these different brands. So we had a couple of certified Ganjiers that went there. They did an activation with compound genetics where when people would come and they would smell the flower, they would be able to tell them, oh, well, this is the dominant terpene profile. Oh, here, this is how it was grown. So really walking the consumer through the experience of what the cannabis is, not just what the cultivar is, but like how it is grown, who grew it, is it sun grown, is it grown indoors, like all of these things to a connoisseur matter because they go into your end flavor, aroma, appearance, experience.
Can we go through what I would refer to as like the tenets of what makes up cannabis or how it's seen in the program or through the eyes of a Ganjier?
So the assessment itself is, when the first thing that I do, at least, and it's a little bit different, there's an app that takes people through it, and the app for me doesn't necessarily go in the order that I use when I look at cannabis. So I like to open the jar first, the jar pop, and then, wait to see. And the first thing I'm looking for is the intensity of it. So people judge that very differently. Some people like to stick their nose right up in it. Some people like to let it sit there for a couple minutes and see how strong it is. There's a couple of things that come into play. If you're in a really hot room, it's going to be more intense because those terpenes are going to volatilize a lot more quickly. They're probably already going to be there in the jar and just come right out as soon as you open it. It's up to each person. I think each Ganjier kind of has their own way of going through it and doing it. So the first thing is the intensity, and then smelling the complexity of the flavors. Is there, is it gas prevalent? Is it fruit? Is it floral? Sometimes it's all 3 of those. So there's different categories that we categorize them in, and then going into the layers that are in each of those. So if I smell fruit, that's great. Is it citrus? Is it stone fruit? Is it, there's all these different kinds. If it's citrus, great. Is it grapefruit? Is it lemon?
Yeah.
Is it tangerine? So these layers of different things. And a tool that I like to use is a tasting wheel.
Yeah.
And that's good for any sort of gustatory art. And I use the process of elimination. So what does it not smell like? Because that's just a lot easier for me sometimes than trying to figure out what does it smell like. So that's the aroma. The appearance, looking at how well grown it is. Is it fully mature? Is it overly mature? What do the trichomes look like? Are there a lot of them? Are the heads still intact? And then the trim on it. Was it a farmer's trim? Is it well trimmed? Did they go a little too tight? And that's why there are no trichomes left on it.
Yeah.
The flavor, we always start with a dry hit. So most people, and at least me, I always smoke a joint or stuff a cone. I stuff cones. I'm just
It's routine. It's
Listen,
it's a habit.
I am not embarrassed to say that. I can roll a joint, but I can stuff a much better cone.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
So taking a dry hit of that, getting that flavor on your palate, lighting it up. Do I still taste those flavors? Do I taste different flavors? How is that smoke? Is it full-bodied? Is it light? And a lot of times that trips people up, and I like to give a shout out to my friend Ao, and Ao's no longer with us. So I always like to remind people that this is her method, and she was a sommelier, and she was a brilliant Ganjier, but she taught us when you inhale that smoke and it's in your mouth, think of milk. Is it like skim milk where it's real light and it's just, you swallow and it's gone? Or is it like cream where it coats your mouth and it just stays in there?
Right.
So looking for the body of that smoke, does it linger on your palate? And then again, those same flavors, did they translate from the dry hit? What else do we taste? Because a lot of times we taste different things than we smell. And then finally, experience. And I think there's a lot of people that will argue experience at the end of the day. That's the most important one, because even if it smells great, looks great, and tastes great, if you don't feel good when you smoke it, you're never going to smoke it again. And that's the one that I think is interesting, because all of these other things we've been able to put metrics to. I can tell you, if it only has two layers, then that's not super layered, right?
Yeah.
I can't tell you my experience and you will have the same experience. We could have vastly different experiences and agree on all of these other things.
And there's some truth to that with respect to terpenes, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I've often given the analogy of essential oils and the legitimacy of the essential oils market to put terpenes side by side so that folks understand that different smells and different terpenes have different effects on our bodies in the same way that essential oils will activate different parts of our bodies.
Yeah, like when you get a really good massage and they'll give you like 3 oils to smell and they'll say which one speaks to you. I think cannabis is like that too for a lot of people. The nose knows. So you take a sniff and the one, like your nose will tell you, I like that. And sometimes people they like the really like the gassy or like the funky cheese, or there's people who like the baby poop smell. Like, these are all, you're going to learn to love that. You're not going to have a choice.
It's been 1 week and we're ever changing, there's ever changing diapers, I should say.
Yes.
Shout out to Gwen. And
to all the moms out there.
So pulling just peripheral or just off the top of my head, one of the things that I learned about first with respect to the Ganjier program was the dry hit. That became introduced into Canna Connect events last year through probably Jude Croyle. And that was a new thing for me and it made sense. Okay, all of a sudden I see, in the same way that you might swish a glass of wine around and take a smell, beer, like you said, a Cicerone. The more that I think about the Ganjier program, the more I realize it's about destigmatizing the plant. Because the Ganjier program is so complex, on the inverse of that is you're picking apart all of the nuances, all of the little things that make cannabis special, and we're not just plopping it on the table or selling a bag. That's what I'm trying to get at, right? There's so much detail that goes into growing cannabis and strains, cultivars, and not just the seeds, but the process, and then not just the process, but the post process. There's a lot of things you can do wrong along the way to screw the pooch. So moving ahead, what types of cannabis strains, cultivars, products are people currently purchasing in the legacy market based on the Ganjier learnings and space that you provide? Yeah,
I think concentrates continue to be the fastest growing segment, whether that's in vape cartridges, which I'm a no judgment, like get it how you got to get it. And sometimes it's convenience, sometimes it's a price barrier. Like there's a reason that everything exists in the way and form that it does. But I see, when we think about being able to look at a vintage of something, so people get really excited about like a 2007 Dom or, whatever that is, cannabis doesn't hold like that. So you can't take a flower and 15 years from now pull it out of your cellar and be like, look at this amazing creation. It doesn't work like that. Concentrates can, especially hash, if done correctly, traditional hash, and preserved correctly, you can do that with. So I think that's where it's interesting. The U.S. is one of the only countries where flower is our sort of predominant choice of consumption. Most other countries prefer concentrates. So it's a very, like we're the U.S. That's how we do. And it's interesting because I think we are starting to see that shift and change. And solely in the storage and shipping too. When you think about shipping biomass, even, especially when it's been processed and packaged, flower versus concentrate, I mean, there's such a huge difference and so much easier to control a lot of these things along the supply chain with concentrates, depending on the concentrate.
Yeah, you're talking about a more refined product, so therefore a smaller package.
Right.
Naturally.
Exactly. When you look at, you take fresh frozen cannabis and you turn that into, say, rosin, your yield on that is, if you're lucky, 4%. And so you think about just the weight of that. Now we're just talking about the distribution of weight across, all of these. I'm assuming there's interstate commerce at some point here. And even honestly, even across the state, when you look at shipping flour in glass jars, which is probably the best way to do it in terms of preserving it, that's heavy. So think about the glass jar that it takes to ship an ounce versus what that ounce yields in concentrate.
Yeah, and then having perspective for price, given the amount of time that goes into refining the flour, refining the oils inside the flour into a consumable gram.
Yeah. Well, and also growing outside is not necessarily preferable for flour, but very doable for flour, for concentrates versus smokable flour. So you can grow large-scale outdoor flour for concentrate in a way that you wouldn't grow it for smokable flour.
Okay.
So a little bit more eco-friendly too.
I wonder how Minnesota's outdoor cultivation licenses and the square footage for canopy size, I wonder how that aligns with drawing conclusions to what type of a concentrate market we'll see. Are we going to have enough acreage to have a good supply of concentrates?
So maybe outdoors. If not, people will grow it indoors, but you're going to see the price point go up. I think one of the reasons that Michigan has the price point that it does on some of its concentrates is because of how much they're allowed to grow outdoors.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Michigan's got a great market for a lot of aspects, right?
I think for some aspect, if you ask the cultivators, they would not necessarily agree it's a tight market.
Okay.
It's hard to make margins there.
Well, let's take a quick break and we'll come back with part 2 with Elizabeth Sage.
Cool.
Ever felt like running a cannabis business means running in circles just to get basic banking? Union Bank and Trust gets it. They've been helping cannabis businesses for over 10 years, solving problems like securing accounts, managing cash flow, and navigating regulations. No more jumping through hoops, no more runarounds. Just straightforward banking solutions built on trust, integrity, and performance. Check out unionbankandtrust.com today. That's unionbankandtrust.com. Hey, Kale.
Hey, what's going on, Tanner?
Nothing much. So we're here with Kale from Seed and Sesh. Super excited to be chatting with you today. Kale, I'm looking for something to do on Tuesday nights. Have any ideas for me?
Well, Tuesday nights on Payne Avenue are normally pretty quiet, but we do have home grower meetup nights on Tuesday nights. So, we have our little community of home growers out here, and when we opened the store, I realized there are a lot of people out here who have been growing a lot longer than me, and there's a lot of people who are looking to get into it, and so we wanted to just create a space where people could come and talk about their home grow and dispel some myths, and maybe I had people bring in compost for other folks, and
Cool.
It's a lot of fun. It's Tuesday nights, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Bring your own flower if you'd like. We encourage people to enjoy their flower and share their flower outside. But we always have events. We're looking to start getting some more classes rolling on Tuesday nights because people are looking to get just more information and more interactive stuff going on. So
Cool. So if I'm a grower, I should come on down to these events?
Oh, absolutely. Even if you're not a grower, but you're like curious about growing, or maybe somebody gave you a plant and it's in your window and you want to figure out how to like not kill it. Maybe you don't really want to grow like super big weed and you don't want to invest a bunch of money, but just the idea of it's really fun. Like I have folks who just like to make edibles, and they come down and they get to learn about, how to make their edibles better and things like that. So it's turned into a really cool community. There's a lot of different folks that come out. So
And remind me, where can people find Seed and Sesh?
so you can find us on Instagram at DD, that's like Dabbler Depot, Seed and Sesh. Also, you can find us at ddseedandsesh.com. And you could just stop down by the shop. We're at 949 or 951 Payne Avenue. They're right next to each other. You can't miss us. We're right across the street from Brunson's.
Sounds like a fun time. You know where I'll be on Tuesday.
All right.
And
we'll
you
see
should be there too.
Absolutely. We'll see you there.
I do love a pop vac jar though, so like big ups for that right away. That's so satisfying.
Ooh.
Do that again for the.
And we're back.
Very satisfying.
So Tanner just shared some.
Oh, that. She's got pretty color.
Tell us about what you've got in your hand.
Well, I would like. Do you have a tool that I can just poke it a little? I just want to poke it a little.
The first Ganjier ever on the Northern Lights podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, so it needs a little time to wake up. I think, like, initially, my first, like, the color of it, very, very nice.
Okay.
I think a lot of times with concentrates, people are looking for really, really light color, and they're used to BHO and some of that other stuff. And for me, I like to see it's a creaminess. I like it on the lighter side. It really is so cultivar specific, though. And so sometimes you are looking for something that is never going to exist washing that flower. And so really understanding what you're looking at helps you determine some of the quality around it.
Sure.
But yeah, like for example, the color was really good. The smell right away, I could smell it. I can still smell it sitting right here. I like to get into kind of the texture of it. And to your point, it's still a little cold. So it'll take a minute before I can start poking it around. But even in, when you look at traditional hash, it's got it's not just one color, right? It's kind of like multicolored, and it's got the dimension to it. And so looking at this, I can see some of that dimension in here. It's almost like it sparkles in a million different ways.
Sure.
But it's real creamed together like that. So yeah, that's what I see here.
This is outdoor grown?
It's a little crumbly right now, but I think that's just the cold temperature. I think if we poke it again in about 20 or 30 minutes, it'll look a little different.
Does hash change name once it's been refined from flower? Does it go from the cultivar strain to then embody a new name? Or
no, I think you use the strain name.
Still the strain.
Still the strain name, but just whatever type of hash it is.
OMFG. I do love that.
Isn't that fun?
And so one of the things that I think about when I see some hash in a jar like this, I think about the outdoor picnic tables in Northeast Minneapolis at Earl Giles and the Canna Club.
Yeah.
Do you remember when they first started?
I do.
I think it was about a year ago.
It was. Officially, it was in December. And so Robert and I have known each other for a while. In October of last year, we started getting together a little bit more informally, just kind of like a crew of us and hanging out and having just interesting conversations and things like that. And then after a while, he's like, oh, this is like, there's something here, right? People are craving community. They're craving an informal, like, come if you can, but you don't necessarily have to. It's a place to meet up. And the big thing for me, two things. Number one, they're asking you to come here for cannabis,
yes,
which no other restaurants and bars are really doing right now. So they've made that whole mezzanine area not just available for people, like it's only for doing cannabis. There's no alcohol up there.
Right.
And I think there's something to be said, like for us to have our own space. Like, thank you for recognizing that we need a space like that. But then going beyond that, they've given us a space outside. And so there can be consumption outside. And there's a lot of places still that are not comfortable with the smoking aspect of it.
Yes.
And so I say big ups to them for giving the community a place that they can get together and do some of the heady things that you can't do a lot of other places.
In public. And there's an open door.
Yeah.
Multiple open doors. There's at least 3 ways to get to the mezzanine, right?
Yeah.
And so the access and the repetition, the fact that it's every Wednesday from 5 to 9 is awesome. You don't need a ticket to get there, and they're uniquely equipped to offer a menu of both beverages as well as food.
Their food is so good too. Like, people sleep on the food, but you should be going there for the food and staying for the smoke.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you like, for me as of late, it's been a time thing, but no doubt do I think it's a quality experience.
Yeah. And they've done some changes too. Like, there's a bar outside now where you can place your drink and food orders, which I think is amazing.
I didn't know that.
And, I think you guys have been there before doing, I know, education around the legislation.
Yeah.
And that they're inviting brands in and giving them a place to showcase their wares, sample people out, and have, in-depth conversations with a lot of times competitors in the market. So I think, one of the things that we had kind of talked about was like, Minnesota, what makes it different? I don't know if it makes it different, but there's a lot of heart here.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of heart in a lot of places where people are in this business, because you don't stay in it unless you really, really care. You might have got into it to make money, but you don't stay in it unless you really, really care. So there's a lot of heart and a lot of people coming together that haven't had opportunities to get together as professionals in this industry because it is so new.
Right.
So it allows that to happen in more informal settings. And I think people are more likely to share with one another and let some of those industry walls down and really start to work together. Cooperation is a real thing, and other industries are doing it. And cannabis, because of the secrecy of it for so long, because you couldn't talk about it, it has made people very hesitant in a way that has done really all of us a disservice. And I think it's great because you see some of that starting to shift, and places like Earl Giles allows people to do that.
Without a doubt. And there's a lot there. I think right off the bat, one of the quiet parts, the unfortunate quiet realities of what you just mentioned as far as being able to collaborate and is bandwidth and time, and are you thought out enough in order to plan ahead?
Yeah.
Versus not being able to do something because you're just staring right in front of what you have in front of you and you're unable to see peripherally how you could connect.
Well, and I think we're all kind of struggling right now is we all see ahead. We just don't know what that timeline looks like. And so a lot of people are stuck in this, like, I'm not sure I know what I want my next move to be.
Yeah.
And it's completely out of their control.
And then back to, the brand we're referring to, Earl Giles, I think the brand has an opportunity to evolve from, it's already multifaceted. So let me give it its flowers. There's a restaurant component. There's the drinks. There's the retail drinks that Robert helped develop with Earl Giles.
The Pifton
that's right, the Pifton line of beverages. But then they're also co-packing and producing behind the scenes for other brands.
Yeah.
But I think the maturity that Earl Giles has showed is also an opportunity for it to further evolve to be a space that can allow for You Betcha to come in and have their own product sampling night like they did. And so I see that as a more mature brand. And I do look to Robert Kaiser as a mature professional in this market and a friend and somebody who likes to have these in-depth conversations. I met him in a sauna. I met Robert through the Embrace North sauna community. So when I started talking to Robert, it was in 100+ degree heat, just talking about whatever. And
no walls there, right? Literally no walls.
Man, is that a nice place to be? It really stimulates conversation. But Earl Giles, the mezzanine every Wednesday, I just wanted to plug that because I know you have helped play a role in developing that and showing up.
Yeah.
A large part of what we talk about is one of the key growth hacks is showing up.
Yeah.
And then that's just time, and tip your bartenders, that's a big part of it too.
Always tip your bartenders.
Yeah. So, we've talked about some things. I want to give you the floor a little bit. What's on your mind and what would you like to discuss on the Northern Lights podcast?
Oh, God, like so many things. One of the things that we touched on a little bit was the market here in Minnesota, and you asked what new products. And one of the things I wanted to say, it's amazing all of the beverages and the gummies that we have. I think it will be really interesting to see when there is flower and concentrates for purchase, what people gravitate towards, because we have introduced our entire state to cannabis in terms of beverage and edibles. And so for a lot of people, when full legalization, adult use came around, they were like, well, it's already legal. Like I can buy it at Cub. And it's like, ooh, no, there's a little bit more education I think that we need to do for people to fully understand the different modalities that are available. And drinks are great. And, gummies are great too. But when we're talking about medicine for people, right?
Sure.
So cannabis to me, it's all medicine, and you can use it recreationally. Your body doesn't know the difference. If it needs it, it's going to go to where it needs. So there's that part of it.
These are like kids' vitamins then.
They are, yeah. But I mean, it doesn't mean that your body doesn't still need them, right?
Right, like dino vitamins.
That's the beauty of it. They're adult dino vitamins. I think it'll be interesting to see, some people need medicine, and medicine a lot of times is expensive.
Yeah.
And you have to have, the caregiver program is great, but that's one person who can grow one other set of plants. So either if you need medicine, you need to learn to grow it yourself. And that involves, for a lot of people, learning to grow, the setup of it, finding the right cultivar that works for them and for whatever their needs are.
Right.
Or your other options are to go out and buy them in the market. So it'll be interesting to see there are people who need medicine, and they're going to want to grow their own. They're going to want to go buy the flower because they want that whole plant medicine. They know that it's not just the cannabinoids, it's the terpenes, it's the flavonoids, it's the esters, it's the thiols, it's all of these other things that are in the plant that are giving us all of the different effects that we are looking for.
For sure.
There will be recreational people who just want to go and get super high, and they're going to be okay still using some of these other products that are in the market. They might want to go try and find a high potency concentrate to do that, or they might not. I think we're going to see two very different consumers come out of this. We're going to keep some of our beverage, hemp, gummy consumers, and then we're going to see who's ready to transition to some of these other things. But I think where I was going is the price point for a lot of that. So beverages are a great modality.
Yeah.
On a daily basis, when you think about, you're limited to 10 milligrams total in a can, obviously 5 milligrams per serving.
Yeah. 2 servings in every can. That's what I always say.
If you wanted 50 milligrams, that costs you some money. That's not a cheap way. I have a hard time getting the same effects from beverages and edibles that I do from smoking a joint. Now, if you grow your own flower, especially if you grow it outdoors, but even if you don't, you consider the cost of lights and feeding it and all of that, dollar for dollar or pound for pound, you're so much better off smoking weed and growing your own that you smoke, or even buying it and using that to alleviate your pain. It's just a much more cost-effective way to do it. So I think there will maybe also be a consumer that has found pain relief in these products that will eventually transition into some of those other ones.
Yeah, go swim a little deeper. I like the third aspect, which I think Tanner and Jason Tarasek talked about last week, is the products that aren't legal now that are more refined, not just flour that you mentioned, but like we're missing vape cartridges right now, even in the CBG and CBD form. We're missing tinctures above 750 milligrams. And so before you and I met, but while we were both here in Minnesota, say pre-pandemic, that you were able to, tinctures did make up more of the market share, and there were, Delta 8, Delta 10, CBG, CBD vapes. And like, I do miss those products. I realize that I'm not going to speak for the entire market. I know that that's only a smaller percentage. But I am looking forward to all of the products coming online. And then maybe you like the mini grown CBG gummy. Well, you're really going to like it in a vape cartridge, for example. I always have thought of the Minnesota consumer to be more familiar because we've had to go through like so many stages of cannabinoid adoption from CBD and onwards, CBG, and I could keep going, right?
And we've had things, pulled from the market too, right? Like
Yes.
THCV, which
Yes.
I'm a big THCV girl, and you can't get that anywhere anymore.
So for our TikTok audience, tell us what THCV is.
Well, it is a varin. So what's interesting, THC has a V, a THCV, and then there's CBDV, and
They
so
all have
they
these
all
things.
have these varins, and so it's a really interesting cannabinoid that has probably existed for a long time. I mean, it obviously naturally, and through the process of breeding, people have bred for it and selected it out, and a lot of people get extra energy from it. That's what it's known for: appetite suppressant.
Yes.
It's not as psychoactive.
Right.
It's not hardly psychoactive at all. So especially when you pair that with some THC,
Yeah.
it's a nice combination. There is a farm in Northern California, Emerald Spirit Botanicals,
Yeah.
and they are known for their Pink Boost Goddess is their high THCV cultivar. And it's a really interesting, and it's a beautiful story. Joseph, his mother has been, so he's second generation. His mom is still out there gardening. It's him, his mom, his brother, and they were back in the Prop 64 days. So she was doing this for medical patients, and it was a very different, here in Minnesota, when we think about what the medical market looks like, it is actually very transactional. It's very much like going to a pharmacy. I don't know if you were ever a medical patient, but I was. In my experience, you go to a doctor, they do this, but when you go to the dispensary, you have to talk to a pharmacist there. And it's interesting, talking to the pharmacist there, and there's a lot of misinformation that the pharmacist gave me. And that's, like when we know better, we do better. And hopefully by now we know better.
Shout out to Paul.
But it was a very sterile process too. There was no flower available at that time. It was only distillate. It was only, you could buy, THC 1-to-1 or CBD. Like there just was not a lot of that.
Not a lot of transparency.
Right. So medical in California back in the Prop 64 days was farmers going, these were small, independent, almost like co-ops that they were selling into. They oftentimes grew specifically for patients. One of these dispensaries, they would only have 50 members. And so they worked directly with the farmers to grow the medicine for the patients. So it really was personalized medicine.
Yes, I love that.
If you will.
Right.
And so his mom's been in the game since back in those days, and now moving into the legal market, they've been doing their Farm Cut Canna is the brand that they release under, and they're with 4 other, they're all very regenerative permaculture farms up there. But the plant, for a long time, they weren't testing for THCV. And so it wasn't until they discovered what it was and could start testing for it that they realized this plant that they've been breeding for so long was super high in THCV. And they would have people come to them and tell them all the time what it was doing for them.
Yes.
And without knowing what it was, they just kept breeding for whatever that was. And it turns out it was THCV. But there's something really beautiful about the way the plant works with people and the people work with the plant. And
Yeah.
when they can give you that feedback and say, that made me feel really good,
Yeah.
you can say, okay, like what are we doing with that we can continue to do to continue the evolution of the plant and the evolution of the medicine?
Yeah. And to give credence to the Ganjier program while also highlighting THCV, it's very hard for regulator X, Y, or Z to understand when we tell them what you just told me, that this is called THCV, the V stands for Varin. It is THC, but it's a different compound, and the effects of it are much different. Therefore, you shouldn't be as worried about
You don't have to regulate the same way.
You don't have to regulate the same way, yet we're not able to find that product on our shelves in Minnesota currently.
Right. And it is truly a wellness product.
And lends itself to help women quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's where the medicine is misunderstood.
Yeah. And it's interesting you mentioned women. One of the products that I like to highlight and was really interesting. So in my community, we meet 3 times a week and do different things. And
Plug the name of it again.
Sage Advice Community Education. But then I will also plug, it's an interactive Zoom call every other week with 2 other women. It's called the Great Lakes Bake Club. It features Angelique Zarillo, who's a certified Ganjier out of Chicago, and Sarah Tupper, who is a cannabis lounge owner and product designer out of Michigan. So we are here in these 3 Great Lakes states trying to have conversations about cannabis, but also about entrepreneurship, about mothership, because they all kind of go together. And we so often find ourselves in rooms and spaces with people needing resources, needing community, other things to talk about. So there's a company out of California. This is like interesting products that I don't know that are going to take off in Minnesota, but I think should take off everywhere. So I heard about Hello Again a few years ago, and 2 women who were going through menopause. They're in Santa Monica. They're, they're not cannabis girls. They were 2 women who were looking for relief from their symptoms, and they ended up in a dispensary and trying cannabis and realizing like, oh, there's something to this, but they didn't want to get high. And so they were like, how can we do this? How can we get the symptom relief that we're looking for? And they created vaginal suppositories, and they're loaded with different ratios of THC to CBD, other botanicals, and they have marketed it under menopause. There's one for sleep, there's one for periods, and there's one for hangovers, which is, so it's kind of like spanning the spectrum of womanhood, all of the different things that we could need. And it's a really unique modality that most people don't ever think about. But when we think about the endocannabinoid system and where all our receptors are clustered in our body, our reproductive systems are heavily, heavily influenced. So being able to put something that is effective, it's transvaginal, so like transmucal, same as a tincture, it has direct absorption into your bloodstream and localized. You're right there where the pain is. So like endometriosis, PCOS, all of these different things.
There's so many people that need that product.
And they don't know that it exists, and it is so effective. So we love Patty and Carrie, and we're very excited to learn a woman named Lisa Williams bought this product and is turning it hemp-based. So she is Texas-based and is like, oh my God, this is amazing. Everybody needs this. And we're like, oh my, like we kept telling them that, like we want it everywhere. So we were really excited. We had her on Tuesday.
Oh, you did.
And came and, talked to people about it. And again, it's like something people don't really know about. And one of the fun facts that I like to point out, they won the Emerald Cup 2 years ago for Best Topical. And one of the people in my community, he was a judge that year, and he came on and told us like he used them. So they can be used rectally too. And so people who have colorectal cancer, prostate cancer, huge relief for things like that. And those can be really, really difficult things to treat.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm down to explore that because it is localized. I wasn't familiar with that term. As soon as you said, I go, that's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I used it after, so my youngest child is 2.5. And so that was part of my postpartum recovery, was using suppositories because, again, very intense, very localized relief.
Inflammation reducer. Okay, I see it. Yeah. The quick aside, I was reading today that our favorite MSO, GTI, is partnering with Magnolia Bakery.
I did see that.
And Magnolia Bakery might be my favorite banana cream pudding.
Yeah.
Oh, it is so good.
There's a reason they're known for it.
And GTI is finding a way to make that product hemp-based so that effectively they are now turning it from a one state by one state into a 48 or 49 state opportunity. We'll wrap up shortly here, but in a nutshell, what do you think of this new on-ramp into the cannabis industry through hemp-derived products?
Well, I was going to say, I think somebody, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Like, I don't know that banana pudding needs to get you high. Like, can we just let banana pudding be banana pudding?
Banana pudding already does kind of get me high.
Kind of.
You know what I mean?
Like, so it's interesting to me because I love different modalities. I love making people realize that it's there. I love that it's accessible, but like at some point it gets silly is what I'm going to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a great point. And that's where marketing comes into play.
That's, yes.
But, you know, we'll keep going a little bit, but it's 2024. We're nearing the end of 2024. We're looking ahead to 2025. We have seen the hemp-derived market legitimize. We're getting very close to social equity licenses being awarded. It's about to start happening. If it already hasn't happened, it's about to start happening. What advice would you have for someone, potentially someone with less cannabis experience, but they're a user, but they're not working in the industry, but they've been around the plant? What advice would you have for someone like that looking to enter in on the professional side of the industry?
I would say get in where you can. And so take whatever professional knowledge and skill you have now and move that into the industry. And if that's not an option, to just like cannabis, you know, start low and slow, but it actually moves really quickly. So a lot of times people are offended saying like, I wouldn't be a bud tender or a store manager because I was a CFO or a, you know, marketing director.
Yeah.
And you know, like I get that, but it goes really fast. That's what people don't necessarily understand is just because you start somewhere doesn't mean 6 months later you won't actually be in the role that you wanted to be in at the very beginning. But it takes heart. And I would tell people just because you like smoking weed doesn't mean the industry is for you, because it's a lot more fun if you still have your job that pays you really well and you don't have to hustle and then you just pay for weed. Like there's a trade-off at some point, right?
Absolutely.
But I think there's a lot of opportunity. You also have to think outside of the box. Everybody at first, you know, I said I went on my little journey where I'm like, maybe I want to grow, maybe I want to own a retail. It goes so far beyond that. So thinking about things that aren't plant touching until we have descheduling, until we have, you know, all of these other things that are prohibiting us from running really profitable businesses.
Yeah.
Think about the things that you can do that you don't have those restrictions on, that you can still be impactful, but you don't have to hustle so hard.
And, you know, stop by Earl Giles on Wednesday nights.
Well, and networking, like truly that is the lifeblood of this industry, and you never know who you're going to meet. I'm always surprised at people that don't know each other. I'm like, how do you not know this person? And I think, you know, I'm naturally a connector, and I see all of this as one big puzzle that I'm trying to figure out the pieces of it too. And there's a lot of really good players in this game, but they don't necessarily know each other. They don't necessarily know how they're supposed to interact with one another. And again, we're also at this point where people are like, yeah, I want to start, you know, like I have everything I need to start a grow. I just don't have a license. And, you know, once I have that license, will there be retail that I can sell it to? So I think there's this big sort of, I call it like the collective inhale, where everybody's holding their breath waiting for like, okay, we're all ready. We've all got all the pieces in play. Like somebody just has to say start.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
somebody
in a perfect world.
Somebody.
Yeah. So Elizabeth Sage, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you reaching out.
Yeah.
I'm glad we did this.
Me too.
Love to do it again in a year and see where things are at. Maybe there will be some retail stores.
I sure hope so, because I'm a shop girl.
Yeah, and I know there will be more Ganjiers in the state of Minnesota.
You know, I will say, outside of California, we have more Ganjier than any other state. And that's something I'm super proud of, because I think, you know, number one, it shows people's commitment to it. But I think number two, like, I think it says something about me. Like, they must not think I'm stupid, right?
Yeah.
Like, they might be into it.
Check out Sage Advice and the Ganjier program. Reach out. She is here for you.
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at the Sage Ganjier. You'll see a lot of stuff in there. It's a lot of motherhood. It's a lot of home life. It's a little bit of it's a lot of bit of cannabis too. But it's kind of all the things.
Gardening.
It's gardening. Yeah, I tend to say cannabis probably more than I should.
Hey, we're going to keep going. Yeah. Awesome. Well, we'll be right back with some high notes, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Dabbler Depot Seed and Sesh is the ultimate one-stop shop for all types of cannabis enthusiasts. From grow equipment, including seeds, tents, and lights, to all kinds of Minnesota-grown infused beverages and edibles, Seed and Sesh is a one-of-a-kind cannabis experience. It is also home of the Dabbler Studio, which is where this very podcast is recorded every Friday afternoon. You can also join us every Tuesday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. for our home grower meetup, where you can share in the joys of cannabis cultivation with like-minded folks from right here in the Twin Cities. Find Seed and Sesh at 951 Payne Avenue in St. Paul's East Side neighborhood. Dabbler Depot Seed and Sesh. Growing plants, growing community.
Ready to kick off your home grow? We've got the perfect hookup for you. MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. They've got everything from fast flowering strains to unique hybrids, all ready for growing in Minnesota. And guess what? Our listeners get an exclusive deal. Use the code NL10 for a 10% discount on your entire order. Don't miss out and get started with the best seeds. Start your growth strong with MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. Remember, NL10 for 10% off at MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. Grab your seeds today. All right, and we're back. Steve, that was a really great conversation. I'm glad that you brought her on the show. We're able to chat a little bit more about her background, and I'm excited for people like that to find a role in what does our future industry look like and help to craft it.
Yeah, there's a lot more to unpack with how she's helping create a space and for folks who not only are committed to the Ganjier program, but are also looking for a community to grow even after the knowledge is acquired. And I think it's really cool. I think she's certainly early in a lot of ways that you and I have been early to building community, but it requires someone there to do the work and provide the space and to have the repetitions. So I shout out to the Great Lakes Weed Club, right?
Yeah, that's really cool.
That's cool. The Great Lake Bake Weed with an O.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so we get to do a new segment on our show here, which is like the Northern Lights Mail Hour. We received a package in the mail.
Yes.
And we're going to go ahead and open it up. Now, Steve, why did this package come? How did this make it to our mailbox?
Absolutely. So, real quick plug, if you do want us to open some packages on the show, you can send first send us an email so we know it's coming, but we have an address for you. You can send it to the Minnesota Cannabis College, address it to Tanner, and if it's good, it'll end up on the show. And we have a package from Moonlight Cannabis Company.
Yeah.
I was hanging out on Legacy Cup Day, so what was that, September 13th or 14th, something like that. I was hanging out at the Cornell Urban Agriculture booth.
Okay.
I had the volcano set up. We were hanging out. It was a fun day. And next to Cornell's booth was Moonlight Cannabis, Carter and Allie Mann. And they were launching a new product, and I'm going to pull it out here in a second. It's like a 2-ounce shot.
Yeah.
Super cool. And they were like, hey, or I was curious. I was like, can I try this? And so I did, and it was amazing. But fast forward, they launched like on their email marketing campaign. They're like, this product's available. And I was like, cool. So I emailed them. I was like, love the product. Would love to try it on the show. Would you be open to sending us some product and we'll feature it on the Northern Lights podcast? And they were like, yes. They were so appreciative. I think I copied you on the email.
Yeah.
And like, not only were they willing to send us some product, they also are sending us some swag.
Yeah. All right. So I opened the box because you were out of town doing some stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
You were busy. So I just wanted to make sure there was nothing perishable in there, and but everything else is left exactly as is. So we've got a sweet shirt. We've got the Moonlight hat now.
Yes. So
you look too cool to be Steve Urkel now.
I have a note. Thank you for all that you do for this industry. Oh, that's so nice. No, that's far too kind. And we are, that's a very nice note. I won't read the whole note online, but holy cow.
Shout out to the Moonlight crew. So
yes.
We've got so much in this box. I was shocked. So let's talk a little bit about what are these bags in essence?
So Moonlight, the first time I heard about Moonlight Cannabis, they were selling through the Natrium stores. and they were putting together these unique cannabinoid blended products that were not unlike the ones we were talking about on the interview today, where
for sure.
they had a THCV product, and this one is a 2 milligram THC, 4 milligram CBD. So these are gummies. These are like sample gummies. I like the packaging.
Yeah. Oh, and I loved the branding so much. So we've got the Good Night Moon, which has the CBN, obviously a little bit more for that like rest and sleep time.
Yes.
We've got the Crescent Moon, which is a low amount of THC, a little bit of CBD for that happy, vibey, chill mood. Working your way up from the Crescent Moon.
We have the Half Moon, happy, vibey, chill, 5 milligrams THC, 10 milligrams CBD.
Yep.
I love that they're playing off the moon.
So much. And when we get to the name of what the beverage is, it just
Okay.
plays into it even more. So, but what's that one called?
This is the Space Cadet.
Oh, yeah.
This is 5 milligrams THC with live resin for a happy, floaty, and fun experience.
That one I've heard is controversial in a good way because it tastes a lot like weed. You get that resin flavor because it has actual live resin in it.
How do they do that in a sense? Not Moonlight specific, but I saw Granny's just relaunched gummies with
for
resin
sure.
in it. So I get that you can put 5 milligrams of THC in a product. How do you also put live resin into a product?
Yeah, so realistically what they're doing is it's a blend of the THC that they're adding, and then the live resin, sometimes it's full spectrum, but oftentimes it's like the terpene profile. They're finding the components of the plant that are lost when you're isolating just the THC and sort of adding that back in. Live resin generally refers to how the material was treated after it was harvested.
Okay.
Meaning it went pretty quickly into a freezer or was processed pretty quickly. So you're not having terpenes boiling off, losing what it smelled like as it was growing.
More terpenes intact,
Exactly.
more full spectrum experience.
Exactly. It's going to get you closer to like what smoking might be because you're getting more of that full spectrum effect.
Rad. And I love the flavor here.
Yeah.
Big fan of the Space Cadet. Give that a shout. Check out their website. All of these products are available online, but they're also in stores. So we'll keep going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we've got, I think there's one in between the Half Moon and the Space Cadet. Oh no, we've just got many of the Crescent Moons and Half Moons. That's awesome.
I have a full moon.
Full moon. There we go.
Yeah,
See,
this is the
and
one you're talking about.
I love it. I love this. You can have every single stage of the moon cycle.
This is a 10 and 10.
Yep.
So a 1-to-1 at the highest level for a 1-to-1.
Yeah.
So that's cool. And again, the packaging's great. It looks like I'm seeing like it's the unofficial stamp of like the hemp co-op, which I know has been super impactful for Carter and Allie as they've grown from mom and pop into a reputable brand. I dig it. I'm continuing to dig it. I like that it's feminine, but a good. It's not purely feminine. You can tell that there's a male and a female influence on the brand.
Yeah. Totally would agree with that.
Mom and dad as well.
All right, so we've got some really cool gummies. I was really stoked for you to pull those out, especially the Space Cadets. I'm going to grab
go
one
ahead.
of those in just a second here and see what that is. But as I'm trying this, I'm excited for you to pull out the shots in there and to read off what the name of their beverage is.
Yes.
We've got Crescent Moon, Full Moon, Good Night Moon, and we've now got their beverage.
Bum. That's right. Sorry, guys. I've been busy. I forgot the name of the product, but boy, do I love it. This is called the Moonshot.
Uh-huh.
And it is a shot by Moonlight, so therefore, Moonshot. The thing that I love about this, beyond the 10 milligrams of THC and the 10 milligrams of CBG, I really love the flavor that I get with this product.
Yeah.
It is a juicy, refreshing cherry flavor that kind of makes me want to drink another one.
Okay.
It's kind of like a shot.
So here's what I love about this is you've tried this before. Jordan, you've never tried this before, right?
I've not. We
I've
just got
also
them into
never
the
tried
store.
this.
We just got them into the store like 3 days ago. I just took their picture yesterday.
Oh, wait, so if someone
Oh.
wants to do like a Northern Lights experience, they wanted to try one of these moonshots themselves, like you could pause the video, quick get in your car, drive on over to the Seed and Sesh, pick up one of these moonshots, quick drive on back home, safely, of course. And then sit back down, press play, and now you can drink along with us.
Or if it's more convenient, you can visit the West 7th location or the South Minneapolis location.
What?
And yeah, did you know Dabbler Depot has 3 locations?
Oh my gosh.
And they sell THC at these 3 stores.
That's pretty cool. So you're saying I could do the Northern Lights experience basically
in a more
wherever I live in
yeah.
the Twin Cities.
Hey, cheers to that.
All right. Well, salute, guys. I'm excited to give this a go. I'm not going to get up because of the carrot. I'm sort of rooted, but cheers.
He doesn't care it enough.
Doesn't care at all.
Whoa.
It's very fragrant, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it,
Wow.
it tastes better than it smells.
I really like that.
There is something extremely nostalgic about this.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Recess.
I don't know, like cheap Kool-Aid.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It tastes like if I think
But
if I
it's
closed
better,
my
like-
eyes, I feel like it would be coming through a pouch.
A pouch.
But it's good though.
Like a Capri.
Yeah,
Almost.
Mhm.
There's something very childlike and
And
nostalgic
I
about
love the ingredients.
Tell me about the ingredients.
First ingredient,
it's
Mount Shasta spring water.
There it is. There it is.
Wow.
The nostalgia you're
the
looking for.
Moonshot.
Bottled. Not only that, people really seem to like this bottle size. It's just the right amount of sexy. It's round, but it's not trying to do too much. It's easy to read.
Also, 1 second,
Oh, that's real.
Oh, yeah.
That's real.
folks. That's some heavy shipping costs right there.
Hey.
This feels like almost like a liquid gummy. Like it gives you so much of that like full flavor. Unlike I think some of the seltzers that I've had in our industry where it's maybe like, oh yeah, I taste that. This is, you taste that cherry. Full stop.
Are you gushing about this product?
I could see this. It does taste almost that vibe of like a gusher candy. Wow.
We're
I like
impressed.
this. And THC and CBG.
I like that.
That's a
Yeah.
fun blend.
Back
I
to
like
back,
that, yeah.
back to back product reviews.
And the marketing, like you said, I think the branding is just tidy and clean and feminine, but like
But strong
just
enough.
strong. Like not like
Yeah.
it's just it makes me feel like I want to keep buying it.
Yeah, Allie comes from a professional marketing background, and
It shows.
it shows.
Wow. Well, I would definitely encourage people go give this a try.
Yes.
Moonlight, thanks for sending these in. Like this is really, really good. I love your whole branding. I love all of it. I think it's great products, but this is a knockout. I'm gonna have to grab a couple more of these before we leave.
Yeah, I hope that this is the product that really pushes them over the made up edge, as you say. Like I hope this product helps the Moonlight brand become more synonymous across CBD stores in Minnesota, because there's a lot of value in this, and it's a fun product to consume.
Yeah. So I'm going to a Halloween party, not dressed as a carrot, but I'm going to a Halloween party, and I sort of want to bring a couple of these and be like, who wants to do a shot with me?
Yes.
And just see, shoot a quick 5 milligrams back. Suddenly, it's a party.
Perfect. We got a couple here for
Yeah,
you.
we do have
There
a
we
couple.
go. Jordan, any last thoughts on the Moonshot?
I love it. I would happy to have more.
Yeah, I take it. Well, Moonlight, thanks for sending that in again.
Yes. And again, if you would like to get your product featured on the show, reach out to Tanner at mncannabiscollege.org,
There we go.
and we'll send you the address and you send us the product.
Yeah, we really have loved being able to meet people in the industry, hear their stories, try some amazing products that are getting made in Minnesota. So please do reach out. I'll reply to your email, I promise. All right. So we were sent one package, but also earlier today, I received another package. Now, last week on the show, we talked about a new Puffco product that had been announced that some people were into and some people were a little less into.
Oh.
It's essentially they describe it as the pen killer. You've gone to other states, you've gotten your vape cart before. They wanted to make something for the concentrate connoisseur, where you're not having to settle for low-tier metal technology to consume your high-quality concentrates.
Yeah.
So in comes the Puffco Pivot. Now, this came in the mail, seriously, like an hour before we started recording.
Oh, my gosh.
I was watching it. It said it would come by 2:15, and I went, well, we start recording at 2, so I sure hope it comes before that. And it did. It did. So drove it here, and we're going to do a little bit of an unboxing of sorts, and then we'll give it a try, and then we'll come on back and we'll do our high note.
I love that.
So you can see it's like fresh in package. Like it's the plastic is all around this. In fact, we're going to have to figure out a way to get that plastic off here. Oh, wonderful. The Native Care pen. Shout out to Native Care. Thanks for being our wonderful, amazing partner as we open up our Puffco Pivot.
Good thing the Pivot didn't kill all the pens.
Good thing it didn't kill all the pens. All right, we're going to have to... All right, we're gonna have to cut this part because I'm really struggling to open this. Do we have scissors, maybe?
Yeah.
That's good packaging.
Yeah, it's really good packaging. Shout out to Puffco for using real plastic, I guess.
Let me see.
We all hate dinosaurs.
Oh, wait. Here, we got some trimming shears.
They're beautiful. That's exactly what we need. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Now, Puffco has often been described by people as like the Apple product of the weed world, which I think is a little on the nose, but they definitely have it in their packaging very much. It's sort of like buying an iPhone. They've got their cool sleeve. You can enter here, which is just a QR code to scan, and it will tell you how to use the device.
Oh.
We're gonna.
I really
skip
loved
that.
the promo video that came out for this product.
Oh, the promo video. The promo video I thought was so funny because there's so many opportunities that it showed people consuming this when maybe you shouldn't be, but man, you sure wish you had a device to do it. You're shopping in a store, you're buying clothes. I wish I could rip a dab in Macy's. Well, now you can. Now you can with the Puffco pivot. Yeah, their branding was funny on that. But
I wish you could rip a dab in Macy's. I never thought I'd hear that.
we're gonna insert a video here of Tanner going right after this to Macy's, ripping a dab and getting kicked out. No.
I feel like they deal with things way worse than that on a daily basis at any Macy's around here.
Especially because if I were to walk in with my Puffco, they'd say, man, you're not allowed to do that in here. If I hit this, they'd probably say, hey, no vaping. Yeah. So welcome to the slime. I don't know.
Welcome to the
Or they'd
future.
think you're like applying one of their sample lipsticks or something.
Ooh, there
Like,
we go.
Look at the glossy. Look at the.
I'm just putting on lipstick.
They'd rather have you rip a dab in Macy's than rip a tag off one of their items.
That's so true. So it comes with the classic Puffco metal tool. It comes with some Q-tips, the charger, the whole case, the jazz. But we're really here just for this. Now, here's what I love. It's the same 3D coil that you've got on all their other Puffco devices. So when we put a dab in there, it's going to be sort of similar to like putting a dab in any of their other devices.
Now,
Just like that.
I can tell you're influenced by the response that the market has given to this product, but I personally see the value in the ease of this. Like it's a lot less intimidating than a Puffco or your traditional rig. I don't know technology-wise how long it will last, or if you drop that, how many drops it can handle, right? That's still to be seen.
For sure.
But I like in the same ways that make it easy to rip a dab in Macy's, I like the ease that this product provides.
Yeah, totally agree. And I love what you were saying, that it sort of has that different feel. Like I've had before where I go and hang out with friends that maybe aren't cannabis consumers, and you pull this out and you're like, I'm just going to step outside real quick. You get some judgmental looks, and it is what it is. I feel like this I could pull out of my pocket. People aren't going to be as judgmental about that.
And good on Puffco for creating a response to the pen.
Yeah.
You know, the pen lives in probably 2 out of 3 stoners' pockets. You know, it's just kept on deck just in case. This is an on-the-go dab vaping device.
Yeah.
It's
definitely
pretty cool.
So it's got a couple different heat settings. It's got a pretty nice sized chamber. It's a little bit smaller than I'm used to on the Puffco, obviously, but it's the portable device. And what's cool is this chamber is removable. And so I've seen people that buy like 3 or 4 of them, and then you just travel with dabs ready to go like anytime.
Fucking John Wick.
Pop it on.
Just John Wick reloading is
Yeah, it's the revolver of the weed world.
amazing.
Well, I think we should go give this a try. And then let's come on back, and we're going to do some high notes. We'll be right back. Today's episode of Northern Lights is presented by North Star Law Group, a trusted partner for small businesses in Minnesota's legal cannabis industry. Whether you've already applied for a license or just getting started, attorney Jen Riza and her team can help you build a compliant business, identify and navigate risks, put together an application, and keep you informed about the ever-changing Minnesota cannabis landscape. Are you ready to add North Star to your team? Visit northstarlaw.com/cannabis and let North Star Law Group guide you through confidently opening your doors. Again, that's northstarlaw.com/cannabis.
go to the Tyler the Creator concert in February.
Ooh, that'd be cool.
He's his tour is opening in St. Paul.
Opening.
Yeah, first night.
Sick.
Yeah. I think that'd be it. I missed him the last time he came. And I think Tyler the Creator is such a creative, like culturally leading voice that, like, he played Austin City Limits a couple weeks ago, and he was like, he changed one of the lyrics in his song about Tesla to like "fuck Elon," because politically, Elon is quite active on the right side of the spectrum right now. So anyway, I think Tyler the Creator is like a unique voice. I think he's really special.
That's how I feel about Donald Glover. And yeah, I have always loved Donald Glover, like really since like 2010, 2009, 2010.
Yeah.
I remember seeing him in 2011 at Lollapalooza on like one of the side stages. I skipped Jack White to go see
Wow.
Childish Gambino.
Jack White, good call out. First Ave on Wednesday.
Wow. Okay.
Tickets went on sale Tuesday.
It's one of those pop-up or not.
The show was Wednesday.
Okay.
Jack White.
Gotcha.
Very
How
few
was it?
people can do that. I was not there. I think it was amazing. He kept some tickets at $25 for students. I think if we lived in Detroit, we'd have a lot more understanding of like the impact that Jack White has. He has a record shop where they print vinyls in Detroit. One of the few vinyl pressing companies in
It's in Detroit. correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. But he has a studio as well in like Knoxville
yes,
or somewhere in Tennessee, right?
Nashville.
Nashville. Okay. I knew he had both. I didn't know if they were one and the same and located in the same like area, but
You are so on. Nashville, Tennessee is going to be hot with THC beverages next year.
Oh yeah.
25 milligrams THC beverages. That's
those bachelorette parties are about to get
whoa, yeah.
them in their boots and their little white cowboy hats. Boy.
All
it's gonna
right.
get wild.
If I have a bachelor party next year, it's going to be in Nashville.
All right. There we go. Coming to you live, Northern Lights, live in Nashville.
Hey, you're a Johnny Cash fan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love Johnny Cash. I love that old stuff. Definitely.
Cool.
Well, and we're back. You know, what we were saying right before we're back is Donald Glover is pretty cool. But you know who I hate? Childish Gambino. No.
Dude, I can't stand that guy.
Fuck that guy. But Donald, pretty cool.
Yeah, I've heard about that guy. Yeah. Fuck Donald.
Hey, we're back. Guys, what a great interview. We've enjoyed sampling some products. We enjoyed stepping out and trying Puffco Pivot. What do you guys think? It felt to me a little bit like doing a dab. Very hot.
I respect it.
Yeah.
I think for what it is, it's a perfect little tool. Like you look like a stoner on the go.
Yeah. Fun travel piece.
Yeah.
Fun travel piece.
It's too hot for me, but
Yeah.
tell you what, how's that Crafty Plus?
Ooh.
I'm still working out how to get it like I don't think I've ground things up fine enough. I think I'm either packing it too loosely or too tightly, or
He's not crafty enough.
I apparently am not.
It's coming though. That
Yeah.
is a common problem that. Now let's talk about this. Like, here's my high thought.
Okay. Let's jump in.
Technology with respect to cannabis consumption. We had Elizabeth on the show today. She's very much someone who appreciates flower and joints and all of the aspects of flavor and taste and rippability that come into it.
For sure.
As we introduce more technology, and all four products require technology, whether it's a device on the table or a product that we talked about on the show today. As we get further and further away from flower, we have to have different expectations, and there's onboarding that goes into it, whether it's a more refined product that's concentrated or a more technical device that you can do it wrong.
For sure.
And it's hard as a ongoing cannabis user to relearn something when you're used to something that works every time.
Yeah.
That is like actually a really weird segue into my high note is essentially like kind of also going back to like what your mom's point of like intentionality in things is like, I don't know if I'm a smoker, like a joint smoker, because I like smoking joints or because I like to take the time. And my point was like, it's really hard a lot of time to just be intentional about slowing down, be intentional about taking a break, be intentional about being kind to yourself in that regard of, you know, putting on your own oxygen mask before you put on those around you. And
sure.
I'm like, dude, a lot of the value of just going outside, smoking a joint is just going to breathe while I'm like the meditative point of packing a cone, the meditative grinding it up, sitting down, just not doing anything other than intentionally just sitting and being. And I'm like, that's honestly might be more valuable to me than the actual potential effects of the flower.
Yeah, totally.
And
The
so
ritual
it's
of it.
my high note is technology, is the convenience factor removing a little bit of the soul and like, I don't, who am I to say? I don't know. I just know I like smoking joints for a reason. And I think that reason is a little deeper than just like, I like to smoke weed. I think it's much more of a methodical,
Totally.
cognitive practice.
The New York industry has been rolling out and trying to figure out, like, what does adult use look like in this state? And New York is the first state that flower is not more than 50% of a store's sales. They're selling more vape carts than they are flower. And it sort of plays to that changing cannabis consumer. We grew up in a time where you bought cannabis from a person and not from a store.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps kids in the future will grow up with cannabis being in a vape cart, not in flower form. Like, I don't really know of hops as hops. I know of it more through its beverages that people use it for. Cannabis might, who knows, perhaps go a
It's
similar
gonna,
way.
yeah, that kind of removal from farm to consumption, like that bridge just keeps getting longer and wider.
Yeah.
And
But I think home grow will keep it alive.
Yeah.
You know, if people are still connecting with the plant, still touching it, still growing the flower itself, at the end of the day, like, you can't be that removed.
But you can't necessarily look at things in a vacuum.
True.
Because as these growers grow and they yield, they sit around and they wonder, what do I do with this? What do I do with all of
For
this?
sure.
And so it's those that are so close to the plant that are pressing it forward, you know, pun intended. And I like the innovation. I also like the ritual. And then I have to acknowledge through your high note that it is deeply personal how we use the plant.
Mm-hmm.
And it's accepted as such. And what works for you may not work for me. And that inherently is a challenge around cannabis. And what I've also been struggling with internally is understanding it as medicine and then putting barriers around when I consume.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been toying with the logic there.
Yeah. I mean, not to get too personal, but you recently went through a pretty big life change.
Yes.
You're now a dad, which congrats, by the way. I haven't had a chance to say that in front of the camera yet. Congrats.
Thank you.
Have you, obviously early days still, but have you thought at all about how, you know, now you're looking after something? Will that change what your consumption pattern looks like?
I think the goal is healing as much as possible. And I think presence is super important. And I believe that cannabis helps me be more present. And that in itself is sometimes why I struggle to consume in public, is because I just want to be so present but because I'm focused on family now and have been more than ever, it's about using the Stores and Bickle device, 2 puffs. I'm using homegrown flower that I've accumulated, and it's micro doses and heavy supplements, and it's about managing stress and being present, and that's what's guiding me at home. As a man in the relationship, there's only so much that you can provide the baby in the early days of nurturing, and so
For sure.
I've been attendant and like very much the like being there to help and make things easier for Meg.
Yeah, totally. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm really excited always to have you on the show, but also to have, I think, this perspective of, functional cannabis use, of not just saying, oh, well, I'm a dad now, so I guess there goes that hobby. But now saying, how do I use this actually in a way that's beneficial for what I hope to do in life, which is to enjoy it with the people I love.
Yeah.
I think that's cool, man. Thanks for sharing that. I'm excited to ask you more questions about fatherhood off camera, and we'll do that
Yes.
off another time. But
We've grown. We're dressed as carrots and Steve Urkel, respectively.
mm-hmm.
The idea with that was sort of to acknowledge, like, it was about a year ago that we were pushing ourselves to the brink to put on large like educational sessions and seminars and just days for connection.
Absolutely.
And for us to be working with Stores and Bickle again, and to be dressed as carrots in costume, and to be getting product in the mail, like, we want to show innovation and consistency, and we appreciate brands that are like really putting out new products or leaning into the new rules. Like, like Mini Grounds had to change their sleep gummy a handful of times.
Mm-hmm. Or even like you had showed earlier, the 10 milligrams of THC. Well, how is that possible? Well, it's because it's 5 double dose gummies. It's a gummy that could be ripped in half. And it's such a great example of, we've got these rules, we've got consumer demands. How do we merge those two together?
Yes. And the wheel, that was created by innovation within a house that you've helped along the way. Retro Bakery has done things for the gummy market that have opened up new possibilities, and it's about paying attention and creating that extra slice in the mold so that you can appeal to more people. Because
absolutely,
my other high note, or my other thought going into today, was not much has changed in a year. And so recognizing we're doing what we can, and speaking for everyone, and so not a lot has changed, but a year from now, it won't feel like that.
Oh, man, I had so much fun at the Wilderness dressed as a carrot. I climbed the rock wall in back, probably the only time a carrot has ever climbed that. I got to lead a panel with Ryan Winkler, if I recall correctly, dressed as a carrot. Here comes the walks in, like former government official, very serious, being interviewed by a carrot. It was a great time.
And that only happens once.
It does, yeah. Unless, Ryan, you want to come back? I'll dress as a carrot again if you want. No. Yeah, no, it truly, stuff like that, I think will be the stories that we tell of our industry as we're in this transitional time. Yeah, we don't have a lot of great stories about the products that we were buying in stores that were smokable, or the businesses that we were starting up that hundreds of consumers were coming to. But we have the moments of this industry as we figure out, what is this industry? And it's been a fun ride, to say the least.
Shout out to the Dabbler Depot for being there along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And
absolutely.
I've really enjoyed today. It's been a very Minnesota cannabis feeling.
Very, very much so. It's always that way when we come. I mean, Jordan, you and your crew, you knock it out of the park, having this be such a Minnesota cannabis vibe.
Hey, grown plants, grown community.
So if you're still here, Tuesday, Dabbler Depot, Seed and Sesh, Payne Avenue. We'll rip this clip so you can get here by Tuesday. We want to continue to fill up this great meeting and community space. Yeah,
they do some really cool stuff. That pumpkin made at one of those events here. They've got some really cool flower that people are always showing off, sharing that home grow love. Definitely a fun time. So come and check it out.
Tanner, what's your high note?
All right. So this is as hard of a left turn as we possibly could take. I was watching Encanto the other night. Do you know Encanto?
I love Encanto.
Yeah, so we talked about Frozen on this show, and ever since that, it's really sort of gotten the spark back on Disney musical movies, and boy, are they fun to watch, especially when your friend has a Disney Plus login and you just get to stream whatever you want. So my question to you, do you have any good Disney movie recommendations? Because I'm down for a classic. I'm down for a new one. What if you had to go, someone tied you down and said, you have to watch a Disney movie? What would you put on?
Geez, a couple different directions. Old or new. Old, I mean, Toy Story is always like a near and dear to my heart, but Monsters, Inc. Just
Yeah.
I love Monsters Inc. I do consider all Pixar movies, basically since 96 to be Disney, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But more recently, Luca.
Yeah,
Have you
absolutely.
seen Luca?
So I've seen trailers of it, but I never have actually seen.
It's a
the
very
movie.
fun, very heartwarming story of change and growing up and going against, society that doesn't accept you. And
Okay, I'll check it out. I like it. Steve, what's your go-to Disney movie?
Okay, so I'm gonna go with Lilo and Stitch.
Okay, all right. A Hawaiian roller coaster ride. Lay it on. Why that movie?
Because I recently had a baby, and I'm starting to just understand how she looks,
Okay.
and I'm trying to pull references from like cartoons and things because this is like a small person.
Do you think he's gonna lean into the Lilo side or the Stitch side?
I can't decide.
All right. Tell us more.
And Meg's gonna kill me for this, but like the baby is beautiful, and everyone compliments how nice she looks, but I think she kind of looks like a little alien sometimes.
Okay, totally.
And so that's where the Lilo and Stitch part comes in. Now I have a question: who is Lilo and who is Stitch?
Like, which is which?
Which is which? Because I don't watch Disney movies.
Oh, so Lilo is the girl, and then Stitch is the alien creature.
So I have to say Lilo, so Meg doesn't kill me.
Okay, there we go. Lilo. Yeah, exactly.
A great choice.
Yep, beautiful.
Wonderful.
Yeah. I just want to give a quick shout out to the movie Soul. I don't know if either of you guys have seen that. Such a
Yes.
Existential movie. I've never felt so much like I was getting like crushed internally, but also thriving as a person at the same time.
How
while
are
watching
they
Soul.
How are they doing that? They are just making death and mortality and everything just like, oh yeah, here's it in a nice spoonful with sugar. Like, yeah.
Absolutely. I
Boy,
watched a
Pixar.
YouTube video one time that was super great. It described how music in Pixar movies makes you sad. And essentially it's like a 3-part recipe. 1, you've got happy music during happy times. Then you've got sad music during sad times.
Checks out.
And then you get sad music during a happy time, or happy music during a sad time, and you feel so much the like, oh, this is hitting me right in the vibes because this was the sad puppy who just had no parents, and now look at him.
It's growth.
It's growth. Exactly. Exactly. Well, if you've got a Disney recommendation that I should check out, I get to pick the movies like every other night in my apartment. So drop them in the comments below. I'll make my wife watch them. Encanto was awesome. I'll check out Luna. That sounds really cool. Luca. Thank you, Luca.
Also, I might have thrown this on a previous episode. I can't remember. Sometimes dreams and reality fade into one another,
Especially on this show.
Yeah. Oh, God. Orion and the Dark.
Oh, okay. I don't know if we have.
I
talked
don't
about
think
this.
you have.
I have pictures, selfies on my phone of like when the end credits start rolling, and it's just like my whole face is wet with tears and sweat, and I'm like crying. But it's Orion in the Dark. Give that a watch. It's essentially like this kid is afraid of generally everything, especially the dark, and then darkness is personified then. And it's just like,
okay.
But you realize that darkness is just like a big, oafy, lovable guy who's misunderstood too.
I'm obviously not encouraging kids to consume cannabis.
No.
But consuming cannabis and then consuming content generally made for kids, so enjoyable.
Incredible.
So enjoyable.
I'm about to enter that reality.
Oh, yes, you are. Oh, yeah. I don't know if it will be as enjoyable after a couple of years, but we'll see. Keep watching along with us on the Northern Lights podcast, and you too will know if Steve ever gets sick of Miss Rachel or any of those.
Since we've consumed multiple cannabis products on the show today, I have multiple high notes.
Okay. All right.
The last high note I have: the Minnesota Lynx were robbed.
Oh, all right. We got to talk about
my
it. Oh, yeah.
God.
Game 5.
Ooh.
The commissioner of the WNBA was wearing a skyscraper-filled black dress and attended the game and awarded the trophy to the New York Liberty. It had the New York City skyline on her dress.
Wow.
Also, the calls were
the no calls too.
The top 2 players on the other team went like 3 for 50.
Yeah, awful. It was like a less than 1% shooting.
It's almost
percentage.
like they knew.
It was awful.
I don't know. It's super weird. Like you'd think they'd play better at home. They didn't play well. The Lynx somehow came back because they're really good. And the whole thing was just skewed towards the New York
It's
Liberty.
just handed to them. And it's like, I like to pretend that leagues aren't rigged. I know to some degree in some facets, every league is rigged. But like, it's just, usually they're a lot better at like making it a little more.
Yeah, this one was pretty bad.
This was just like, here it is. There's got to be something done about it between this year and next year. And I know that the players union is having some conversations.
Yeah. Speaking of labor peace agreements.
Yeah, they're working on building out better things. And like, I mean, the fact that Caitlin Clark doesn't see $1 from her jersey sales.
Oh.
What?
Well, yeah,
What?
the WNBA was run at a loss for a number of years. So the success that they're seeing now is great, that they're realizing some of that investment. But the league would contend that it still is not there yet where
they lost $40 million this year.
Yeah, I mean,
because they're making big decisions for teams that cost a lot of money, like just even changing from flying commercial to flying charter.
Oh,
every team is doing that now, and it's like, that's a big expense that they don't have the capital right now to even make the decision. But they're like, well, we got to do this, and I'm like,
it's cool to see though. I love that women's sports are becoming more hip and just generally cool. And they have a bar that's just for women's sports.
Shout out my friend Jillian over at Bar of Their Own. She has been crushing it. I remember when she brought the idea. So for those who don't know, Jillian and I used to be kind of colleagues for Beer Dabbler. She was our contracted event coordinator.
Oh.
So she basically would plan the festivals, and she's extremely good at event planning. She came to us and presented this idea of this all women's sports bar. She had seen it happen out in Oregon. A Bar of Their Own in Minneapolis has just been, I think, a really, really, really great breath of fresh air for women's sports.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, in a lot of ways, Minneapolis is progressive, and it always has been. Since we were young, since the 80s when they talked about Minneapolis and the ad agency lineage that comes from Minneapolis.
Oh, yeah.
Here's what I'll leave you with. I think women's sports might be the first entry for a cannabis product sponsor to professional sports, because I think a lot of people have been talking about like maybe it will be professional basketball, maybe it will be football. I think women's sports is where it's going to start out. I'm placing that sign right here. So
I think we should get
Moonshot gummies coming to a Lynx game near you,
or the women's ice hockey team.
Frost.
Ooh, absolutely.
Let's
Minnesota
get the Frost involved.
The
Hey.
Frost.
If
Minnesota
you work for a
Frost.
professional women's hockey team or basketball team or really any sports team here in Minnesota, give us a call. We want to have you on the show, and we'll give you some products too.
Yeah. Go sports.
Go sports. Yeah, sports ball. All right. Well, that seems like a good note to leave it on. So we're gonna leave it there today. But guys, thank you all so much for watching. Steve, it was so good to have you here. Welcome back again. We'll be back in your feeds again next week. In the meantime, find us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. Definitely subscribe on YouTube. Drop some comments in there if you want your comment in the show. Drop it in the comments. We'll bring it here.
Thank you to Natural Harvest, North Star Law Group,
For sure.
Union Bank and Trust.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you to Elizabeth Sage. Thanks to Moonlight. Thanks to Mini Grown for some of those cool gummies.
Dabbler Depot.
We appreciate you all. We will be here at the Dabbler Depot every Friday. Come and check it out. It'll be a good time. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you again next week. Northern Lights is a Minnesota Cannabis College production. This episode was produced by me, Tanner Barris, and by Steve Eigenman and Jordan Witt. Production assistance from Marcus Harkis, Shayna Payton, and John Bartee. Video and audio recording at the Dabbler Depot Studio by Jordan Witt. The information provided in this podcast does not, and is not intended to, constitute legal advice, but is instead for general information purposes only. No listener should act solely on the basis of information provided without first seeking advice from their own legal counsel. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the Minnesota Cannabis College. Please listen responsibly.